Today, we're going to be talking about adding and subtracting fractions. The important thing with adding and subtracting fractions is that you must remember that the numbers at the bottom of the fraction that you're adding and subtracting must be the same. In this case, 3 and 12 are not the same, so we must make them the same. How do we make them the same? Well, we have to talk about something called a least common multiple, or LCM for short. And the idea with LCM is you skip count by the numbers. In this case, let's skip count by threes. And then we're going to skip count by 12s. And then we find the first number where they meet. In this case, they meet first at 12. So that means 12 is my least common multiple. What does that tell me? Well, the LCM tells me that I should convert the fractions so that the bottom of both fractions would be 12. The first fraction is already has already 12 at the bottom. How do we make the 3 into 12? Well, if we multiply 3 by 4, we get 12. But you must remember that whatever we do to the bottom, we must also do to the top. So we're going to multiply the top by 4 as well. 3 times 4 is 12. That checks out. 1 times 4 is 4. And then when the fractions have the same denominator at the bottom, you just add up the top, the numerator. 7 plus 4 is 11. And then you keep the bottom. And lastly, we check to see if our fraction is simplified. In this case, 11 over 12 is simplified because they share a common factor of 1. Here's another problem. Notice how we're adding with fractions with the denominator of 5 and 10. So they're not the same. So we have to make them the same. Well, what number should they be? Well, let's find the LCM by skip counting by 5 and 10s. Notice how they first meet at 10. So that tells me my LCM is 10. So that means the bottom of my fractions must be 10. Well, 1/10 already has 10 at the bottom, so that remains the same. How do we get from 5 to 10? Well, if we multiply 5 by 2, we get 10. But you must remember, whatever we do to the bottom, we must also do to the top. So we're also going to multiply the top by 2. 2 times 2 is 4. Once you get the fractions with a common denominator, we're just going to add the numerator, the top. 1 plus 4 is 5. And then the denominator remains the same. And now we check to see if we can simplify our fraction. Well, notice how we can divide the top and bottom by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 10 divided by 5 is 2. So our simplified answer is 1/2. Here's another problem. Notice how we're subtracting fractions now. Well, luckily, the process is very similar to adding fractions. We look at the denominators of the fraction, 2 and 6. They're not the same, so we have to find the LCM. Well, let's skip count by 2s. Then we're going to skip count by 6. Notice how they first meet at 6. So that is our LCM. We're going to keep 1/6 the same because it already has a denominator of 6. How do we get from 2 to 6? Well, if we multiply by 3, we get 6. But you must remember, whatever we do to the bottom, we must also do to the top. 1 times 3 gets me 3. So the process is very similar, except we're subtracting by the numerators once we get the denominator the same. 3 minus 1 is 2. And then we keep the 6 in the denominator. And then notice how we can simplify this further down by dividing the top and bottom by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So our final answer is 1/3.